Hey guys, what's up? It's Phoebe from Alternative Twist Radio. Today we have a new author spotlight with SS Ralph. He is the author of Dusks and Dawns. Welcome, SS.
Thanks for having me, Phoebe. Hi.
Hi, we're so happy to have you on today. So your book, Dusks and Dawn, is a horror, it's a sci-fi, it's got a little bit of dark comedy. I really liked it when I read the book cover. And I thought, you know what, I got to get this guy, I got to contact him, got to do an interview, find out what the book is about. So I'm really happy that you're here with us.
I'm happy to be here too. Thank you.
So tell me, what is your book about, Dusks and Dawns?
Well, it starts out like the first chapter. You meet Jacob Miller. He's a young teenage boy, but he lives in a very religious town, and it's pretty simple lifestyle, almost like Amish. And it's very secluded. You learn a bit of a background of his story about, he's arranged to marry a girl that he doesn't particularly care for, and he lost his brother and father recently. So he's losing his faith. He's not really, religious like the town expects him to be. And the problem with that is this whole town believes that if they sin too much, that the devil and his demons is going to invade the town, and it's happened before, according to Jacob's grandfather. But over the generations, people are starting to think maybe this was all a bunch of made up stories to keep people in line. And then we get into chapter 2, and then you realize that, these aren't just stories to scare people. Like, hell is actually a civilization, a town that's outside of New Hope that spies on them and makes sure that they stay in line. And if they don't, then they invade them and try to straighten them out again. So and then hell is a bit more advanced. They got electricity and telephone, and the devils and demons, they're not really this isn't a fantasy, or this is more like a sci-fi where their demonic powers are triggered from like certain deformalities that some of them are born without eyes, so they have powerful hearing that they used to spy on New Hope. Some are born without ears, so they have powerful vision that they can use to spy on New Hope. And there's this whole hierarchy with the devil and demons, and the people that live there are the lost souls. They're like like second-class citizens. And so basically the storyline goes back and forth between chapters of New Hope and hell, and then eventually it starts to explain what kind of connection that there is between New Hope and hell, because nobody wanders beyond New Hope. They're scared to leave the town. Basically, it goes like that, and there's 5 more books in this series, and then it explains more, and it gets deeper, and there's a lot of mystery. You're asking yourself a lot of questions. What's the connection between these two towns, and is it in a post-applicable world, or is it in another dimension, or is it maybe all in somebody's mind? There's you really have to read into it. There's a lot of mystery and a lot of unanswered questions until you get to the 6th book, and then it's all explained. But that opens the door to more, because there's going to be 5 more series of books after that. So just lots of mystery, lots of interesting things happen. Gets a bit violent, but it is a dark comedy, so I try to keep it light.
What inspired you exactly to write the book? How did that storyline come about?
Well, I've always sort of had the story in the back of my mind, but it took a long time to piece it all together. And what mostly influenced me to start writing was, I read a lot of books, but I stopped watching a lot of TV and movies because I found everything was getting redone. It was remakes or just retellings of old stories that are supposed to have a twist. And it just I got tired of that, and I thought, can anybody come up with something completely original, something completely different? And I thought, well, if you think it's simple, why don't you try it? So that's what I did. I came up with something that, there's no vampires, there's no zombies, there's no cops, there's no lawyers. This is something that's, I can't say it's never been done, but I think it's pretty original storyline. So that's what got me going. And I was on the road a lot and away from my family, and I needed a hobby. So whenever I'd just get home from work, I would just type away. And eventually I wrote 6 books. It was all like the same story. I knew I'd have to break it up into smaller books, but I had to write all 6 of them just to get the whole story out to make sure it all connected together.
Wow, so you already completed all 6 books in the series.
Yeah,
wow.
And the first one is available now, and the second one is going through editing, and I'm getting the cover ready, so it should be ready before the end of the summer.
How exciting! So do you already have the rest of the plan for the rest of your books? You have your second one the end of the summer, and how about in the future? What's the timeline for that? The releases?
I would say the rest of them will come out maybe within 3 or 4 months of each other. Is the goal. Yes.
That's quick. I'm glad that you already have it all done, because out of the books and movies, especially the books, seems like it takes a little bit longer, obviously, because it's more tedious and time consuming. But it seems like us as the audience, we're made to wait until like a year or whatever, however long it takes for the next book to come out. And I always find that I have to reread the book, right before the next book is out. So, I remember that. Yes. Yeah. It's fresh in my memory. So I'm glad that you have a short timeline of release. To me, that seems like a really good idea.
You just explained what I'm trying to avoid there. I don't want people to forget about the first one, and lose interest. In the first book, there's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end, but not so much that it should annoy anybody, because nothing worse than, I didn't like the way that ended. I got to read the second one, and the last thing they want to do is wait a year, like you said. Just wait a couple months in between, and hopefully that won't get them too agitated. But each book kind of ends with a bit of I don't want to call it a cliffhanger. I call it more of a hook to get them to read the next one, right? So I don't want to space them apart too far, because the hook can become a barb that they don't like, if you leave it too long.
So I was looking on your website. It's called driftwoodblackheart.com, and we'll put the link in the description, obviously. And so I was looking on that, and you have a lot of links available. And already your second book, you have a little teaser on there. So do you have, or will you have, any merchandise available on your website in the future?
I will. When the second book comes out, I'm going to update the site, for the second book. But then I'm also going to add some merchandise. I'll have some shirts with book covers on them, and every time a new book comes out, they can, purchase a new shirt. And then I got, if you go to my TikTok, you'll see my my famous little sock monkeys, and they'll be available too. You can buy them, and they'll have a certificate of authentication, and hopefully, and people are probably wondering what does a guy that writes horror books have to do with these cute little sock monkeys. But when you read the books, you'll understand they're actually characters in the books, because the demons that are living in hell are like royalty, and they have traditions and stuff. And newborn demons, they all get sock monkeys when they're kids. And that goes back, there's a lot of storyline to it, which is something you'll have to read into too to understand. And then some of the demons they have telekinesis, and they can read minds. So they actually animate the sock monkeys, so they almost have like their own personalities and stuff. So, but that's more into the second book with the sock monkeys. They're mentioned in the first book, but they get more involved with the second book. So that's why I'm going to have them available after the second book.
I'm glad that you mentioned basically where the origin came from, the sock monkey, because I was just going to ask that as the next question. How does the sock monkey correlate to your book? So I'm glad that you explained that. It makes sense now.
Yeah, they're a bit of a mystery. Like even the first series doesn't explain them totally, but they that's where the other series come in. There's more origin stories and stuff like that. There's a lot of world building in my books, and some of the stories will go back hundreds of years, maybe forward hundreds of years. It's kind of like if anybody's a fan of the Dune saga, like the first book is sort of the middle of the story, and then it goes forward hundreds of years, thousands of years, and then it goes back before that, and it sort of jumps around, but then eventually everything becomes full circle. And that's my goal with it'll be the Driftwood Blackheart saga. And Driftwood Blackheart is like a main character in all the books, but he's sort of in the background. You really don't get to know much about him. You have to kind of piece it together with all the other books, except one of the series will be basically about him and explain everything. And so it's definitely something I hope people will want to read into. Like I said, there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of layers, there's a lot of world building, and there's a lot of interesting characters. Some of them have a good time in the book, some of them don't, not so much, but they're all interesting people. And
I like that you do a lot of world building. To me, in a book, a series, that's very important, because it shows the reader what the world is about in the story. And if you have, not enough world building, then it kind of seems like it doesn't make sense too much. But then at the same time, if it's too much minute detail, then it's like, well, what does that have to do with whatever? You introduce something like, what we learned in school. You introduce a topic, but then you don't follow through and explain it later on. To me, that's very important, because as a reader myself, I find that kind of annoying. Like, okay, they mentioned this part early on in the first few chapters, but then they didn't talk about it in the future. To me, it wouldn't make sense. So I'm glad that you have that follow through with that, and that keeps the the reader interested in continuing to read the book.
I like books that have a lot of world building, and it makes it a lot easier to write, actually, because if you have this big universe with all these potential stories, and you have characters that are well fleshed out, the stories almost write themselves. It's almost effortless, and somehow everything connects, and their personalities intermix, and basically, I've never had writer's block or anything like that. The only problem I have is trying to find time to write, because I work full time and I have a young family, and but I got all the books planned out, all the series. I pretty much know the whole story, how it's going to play out. So just got to keep plugging away. I'm hoping after the second book, I started writing the second series, but I didn't get too far with it because I've been busy with the marketing and getting the second book published. But I'm hoping once I get the ball rolling, I can go back to writing. And I'm not sure how many books will be in the second series or how long it's going to take me. But again, I'll probably just write all of them just to make sure everything fits, and then publish them in installments, 3 or 4 months apart or something like that.
Yeah, whatever works best for you. I've talked to a lot of authors. They have different ways. It seems like the majority of them, they're all, full-time workers, and they have to literally find their time, 30 minutes, an hour at midnight, 1 a.m., after they get out of work and they unwind, to do the work and the writing, and it would take them years. So whatever works for you, you have a little bit of time, little clumps here and there, what works for you as an author.
It's a constant struggle trying to find time, but I just, whenever I get the chance, I do. And then eventually, I think this first series took me 3 or 4 years to write, but that's after working full time and, everything else. I'm hoping if the books sell well, then it'll free up some of my time to write more. That's my goal, I guess. And we'll see how that works out.
Now, you want to tell me, you mentioned a little bit in our correspondence about a nonprofit charity that you were hoping to start. Do you want to tell me about that?
Yeah, that's probably going to come a bit later after I get the merchandise set up. But eventually, I'd like to set up something where, I can get donations and set up, causes to help, third world countries. Like, we live in a world where, like, a lot of people still don't have clean water or medications and things like that. And I sort of got the idea from the main character I told you, the Driftwood Blackheart. One of his things is that he was sort of like a humanitarian, and he would try to help people like that. So I'm kind of using him as a role model to kind of give back to people. But like I said, it might take a while until I can financially set that up or have enough free time to do stuff like that. And then I have to be popular enough that people will be going to the website and maybe can make some donations and help out. So that's the plan anyway. When it's going to start, I'm not sure, but the sooner the better, I hope, because there's a lot of unfortunate people that don't have the basic necessities that a lot of us have, and I'd like to kind of equal that out if I can as much as possible and inspire people to do the same. You know, my motto is if you're living comfortably, then you should be helping somebody else out. And you know,
I like that motto.
Sometimes, even though I don't have a lot of free time and a lot of money, I'm still doing better off than a lot of other people. So I want to give back, and I'm hoping that I can use these books and my website to draw attention to get more people to help more people out. It becomes infectious, and you know, that's the way I think the world should work. And you know, just lead by example, I guess.
I love that story. And so your main character, Driftwood Blackheart, he sounds like he's a good guy, and I like. Is he a good guy, or he just has good roots?
He tries to be. If you go on the website, there's a backstory, and you know, I can't say too much because I don't want to spoil too much with the series and the books, because it is something, you know, he's mentioned in all the books, and you sort of piece it together. And there will be a series that kind of goes into his backstory, like his childhood and how he grew up, and he does try to be a good person, but he kind of, you know, he goes back and forth because he has mental illnesses that he struggles with, and he loses faith in humanity for a while, but then he comes around again and tries to help people. So basically, he's kind of, you know, he's not a sociable person. He kind of hides back, but eventually he gets involved with people and tries to help, and he tries to be a good person, and he's fighting for humanity. You know, that's where more of the sci-fi comes in. He's fighting against, you know, corporate greed and culture cancel, all these things that lead to like government control and people like being dehumanizing people. You know, he's fighting against that. He's fighting for humanity and keeping people cultural and being able to have personal freedoms and stuff like that.
Yeah, so much of all those topics that you discussed is so close to home. I think everyone in the world now is feeling that effect. Cancel culture, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And all the negative things going on in this world, it affects everyone's mental health. And even if you may not feel like you have mental health issues, like I do, I have anxiety. It's terrible at night, but you have to learn to cope with it. And I feel like the more people talk about it, the more normal it is, because it's everyday life. You have to learn to cope with it and reach out and bring awareness to it. So I love that message. It's a beautiful message.
Yeah, my books were kind of inspired against the cancel culture, and you know, we're kind of living in a society now where people are getting a bit too far left and saying, well, you can't say this and you can't do that, and it's offensive to people. So my books are kind of like a pushback. You know, they say you should say this or shouldn't do that, or you know, you got to suppress people's culture and their religion. Well, that's basically what I'm writing about. And you know, if you say I can't say this or do that, then that's what I'm going to do. And there's probably going to be a lot of people that don't like it, but hey, that's what makes the world go round. You know what I mean? We all should have the freedom of speech, and you know, we should be all proud of our culture, our heritage, and none of that should be offensive to other people. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of a pushback. It's intended to kind of, you know, like I said, it might be offensive to some people, but hey, you know, we can't pretend to, like, you know, always adhere to other people's feelings. You know, it's impossible. That's an impossible goal. And if we want to be ourselves, if we can't laugh at ourselves, and you know, we can't live together and accept each other's differences, then there's something wrong there. And you know, so instead of trying to suppress everything, let's let it out. You know what I mean? You know, let's go back to saying, you know, jokes and you know, and having a good laugh and not being so offensive all the time. It's another thing my books try to do is bring people together in a certain way. Actually, one of the first things in the first book in the series, in the introduction, it says it's a quote by Tom Smothers, and it's from a track from an Alice Cooper song, one of his first albums, and it's a quote saying, "If you're the only censor, if you don't like what I say, you have a choice. You can turn me off." So that's a pretty, I think, a forewarning of, you know, when people look into the first book, it's like, okay, well, this is going to get pretty real. You know, this could be offensive to some people. If you don't like it, you know, just stop reading it and just don't buy any more of my books. But I'm hoping it will like I said, get people talking, get people laughing, maybe get people crying, maybe get people a little scared at night. You know, I figure if I'm not scaring people or making them laugh or cry a little bit when one of their characters gets hurt or dies, then I'm not a very good writer. So there's a lot of emotion there, and you know, I don't know if that's a trigger warning to some people, but it's pretty in depth, and it gets pretty graphic. It gets into a lot of things that, like I said, people say you shouldn't say or shouldn't do, but they've been warned. And
yeah, I read a lot of books, especially even classics, when back in the days you would think that things wouldn't be so graphic, but you know, that's part of building the character. And I think it creates the bond between the reader, I keep wanting to say listener, the reader, creates the bond between the reader and the character. And when something bad happens, of course, you're going to feel the connection, you're going to feel the hurt, but it's all correlated with the storyline, you know, and that's the same way with movies. When yes. Someone, you know, movies, TV, especially in a series, the character dies, you're like, no, oh my God, why? You feel that wretchedness in your soul, because the writers did so well in writing the storyline and writing the character, and then also the actor. But it's the same thing with you as an author. You're pulling that emotion from the reader, and I was already feeling some of that emotion. Like, okay, so the main character Jacob, he was already. I could feel his torment a little bit in the first chapter, where he, you know, was brought up in the, you know, the Amish kind of society, but then he already is hearing and knowing all different kinds of ways. So he's already establishing his own opinions, but he's still held to his, you know, his traditional faith, I guess. So I was already feeling that internal conflict with him. So that was just in the first chapter. So that was very good of you to write that.
Yeah, I try to make like an emotional connection with the characters, and like I think with the last book, a lot of them died, and when they did, it was heartbreaking for me, because like these are characters that were in my life for, you know, like I said, 3 or 4 years. You know, even though they were fictional, they were just, you know, they were always on my mind, and you know, when I had to kill off some of them, it was, I don't know, it was weird. It was emotional for me. So if it was emotional for me, I'm hoping that it'll be emotional for the reader as well, because that tells me that, you know, these characters are almost like living characters, you know, not in the real world sense, but in the reader's mind. That's what I'm hoping they'll make a connection like I did.
Yes, I can definitely feel that they would, and I already did. So talking about your characters, why don't we do a little reading of your book? So this is off of your book cover. So it's called, your book is Dusks and Dawns. Jacob Miller, a teenager who has lived in the isolated and deeply religious community of New Hope all his life, never believed the old stories about how the devil and his demons would invade their town and carry away souls. Only a few surviving elders could claim to have witnessed these horrors firsthand 2 generations ago, yet no one knows for sure what lies beyond the boundaries of New Hope. Everyone who has ever wandered beyond its limits was either never seen again or returned, frightened to death and claiming that they'd seen the eyes of the devil himself watching over them from a darkened sky. Over the generations, the once pious population has become complacent, and it turns out that the old stories Jacob refused to believe are all too true. Hell is actually a thriving civilization with advanced technology that evolved from an ancient satanic and sadistic culture with a hidden and dark connection to New Hope. With New Hope's sins mounting from Jacob's illicit love outside his arranged marriage to a local pervert who peeps on women and fantasizes about abduction and murder, the next reaping of souls is imminent, and the citizens of New Hope will witness the true price of their transgressions. So this is just off of your website, drifthookblackheart.com. And so that already gives a little bit of a tease of what's to come. So it already shows it's gonna be dark, it's gonna be some graphic stuff, but I feel like it'll all correlate into the storyline because it's a horror fiction, a little bit of dark comedy, so it's all a mashup. So your books are available on your website, driftwoodblackheart.com. And I'm so excited to have you and doing this author interview. And I'm even more excited to read more of your books. I only read a few little snippets, chapters of your book, but already I'm invested because I want to know what is the story, what is the world that you built. And also this, you said it was first class and second class citizens, right? I want to find out more about the demons, even though oddly to me personally, when I say that, that's like, oh, Phoebe, that's weird. But as a reader, that's very interesting to me. And so I love your storyline. It's very interesting.
What happens is the religious town, you find out there's a lot of secrets in a dark underbelly, and then you also find out that in how, even though it's a place of suffering and a place of dominance, that some of the devils and the demons, they have a softer side too, and they're, these aren't, like I said, it's not a fantasy. This is like more of a sci-fi. So basically these devils and demons, they're, as deformed as they are and cruel, they're people too, like their kids go to school and have to interact with other kids, and they have 9-to-5 jobs, even if it's torturing somebody. At the end of the day, they come home to their wife or their kids, and like I said, no matter how twisted they are, they're people too, and it goes back and forth, and it all mashes together. Like the Reaping when they invade New Hope. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but their interactions, because New Hope has a darker side than they realize, and Hal has a softer side than they realized. They just, that's the culminating moment. I think it's book number 4 is the Reaping, and then it goes on from there. And if you can go on my website and it'll give you the first 4 books. I got some blurbs there that they can check out, but I didn't want to give out too much information. But I'll put out more blurbs as more books come out, so they can sort of know what's coming.
I like that you also touched on the various topics, and like what you mentioned, even though they're demons and devils, they're people too. And to me, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting thing of making people understand where you're coming from, what your perspective is, what the other's perspective is. So even though, in this world we have good and bad, people that do good and people that do bad. So even though the people that do bad, they're human beings, they bleed, they have family, they have kids, they have a reason why they are doing these bad things, their own reasons behind their doings. Just the same as what the good people, they are human beings, they have reasons why they do good and what they're doing, and what fuels them to do good in their life. And I think that people don't understand what the other person's going through. So just like the good people, they judge the bad people. Oh my God, they're doing this, they're doing that. Oh, that's so evil. Oh my gosh, they're killing people, blah, blah, blah. But why don't they try to understand the other person's point of view and why they're doing it? It's not so much of saying, okay, you know what? Okay, that means that they killed someone. That's okay. That's fine. We shouldn't judge them. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just to try to understand their point of view. Just the same as the evil people that are doing bad are judging the good people. Man, they're so, whatever, they're doing this. Oh man, I would never do that. That's just being a square. Oh my gosh, that's boring, whatever. But at the same time, they're not understanding what the good person, what their reasons are. And that's where the lack of understanding comes from. And I think a lot of that we forget, or at least a lot of the culture nowadays, that's why they're so judgmental. They're not understanding what the other person's going through, or even trying to be open to it.
Yeah. And that's the moral of the stories is between good and evil, it's not so simple, and it sort of blurs the lines between that. And you realize, there's not just good and there's not just evil. There's everything in between. There's a lot of gray area, and there's always motives and reasons why people do what they do, whether it's good and evil. And it's also about complacency. Like I said, there was a reaping. Jacob's grandfather remembers this when he's a small boy, and he tries to warn New Hope that it could happen again. And some of them are, just walking the line out of fear, but some of them think, well, this could be bull made up stories, and people think, well, could that happen? Could people forget so soon after 2 generations? And the answer is yes. Like, just look at our society. It was only 2 generations ago that, like my grandfather fought in the world wars, and already we're forgetting the lessons learned that they went through. We're taking advantage of some of the freedoms that they fought for, and so there's a lot of that in the story too. And there's a lot about complacency and how if you try to cover up the past, whether with culture cancel or whatever, or deleting history, you're only setting yourself up for another fall. If we don't learn from our mistakes and pass them on and teach our kids not to make the same mistakes, then it's going to happen again. And that's what happens in these books. The reaping is like a cycle, and it happens over so many generations. When people get complacent and forget their lessons, then hell's there to remind them that, this is the way this world works.
I'm so glad that you were able to take time and do the author spotlight with us. And so your books is available right now. It's book 1, Dusks and Dawns. It's available on driftwoodblackheart.com. And also your link to Amazon and all the ebooks are available on that site. And so that's driftwoodblackheart.com. I'm so glad that you were able to come on with us today.
I'm glad you could have me here too. Thank you very much. Hi, this is SS Ralph, author of Dusks and Dawns, and you can find my first book on my website, www.driftwoodblackheart.com. And you're listening to Alternative Twist Radio.
Thanks for watching, guys. Please share, like, and subscribe to our channel, and find us on all of our social media, links in our bio. Thanks.